The jungle exploded in flames around Mira's crashing ship, the roar of twisting metal and fire deafening her ears as the fuselage broke apart in a blinding shower of sparks. Her body slammed against the control panel, a sharp pain ripping through her side as the ship plummeted uncontrollably into the dense foliage below. When the wreckage finally hit the ground, the impact threw her clear, and she tumbled across the uneven earth, scraping her skin raw against jagged rocks and thorny vines. Blood seeped from a deep gash on her arm, dripping onto the leaf-strewn floor, mixing with the damp soil. Gasping for breath, Mira's lungs burned with every inhale, the air thick with the heavy scent of strange alien plants and the acrid tang of smoke. The sky above was a patchwork of burning orange and black smoke, filtered through the towering trees, their twisted branches clawing at the sky like desperate hands. Every muscle in her body screamed to move, but pain pinned her in place. Her eyes fluttered open, the world a haze of shadows and light. Then she heard it, the low rumble of something massive, something alive, moving with purpose through the jungle. A shadow passed over her. She froze, heart hammering so violently it threatened to burst from her chest. Above, a colossal winged creature, scales shimmering iridescent green, circled with predatory grace. Its eyes, glowing faintly with unnatural intelligence, locked onto her with chilling precision. The beast's guttural growl echoed through the canopy, shaking the very air, and the jungle fell silent in anticipation. Mira's mind raced. This was no ordinary predator. She knew it had meant to be hunted by something beyond any earthly terror. The choice lay bare before her: stand and fight against an impossible foe, or vanish into the shadows of the jungle. Hoping the creature would lose interest, her breath caught in her throat as she weighed the options. Min Kang, Tok Do, Gong, Oh Gong, Gong. Her inner voice screamed with desperate resolve. If I fall now, the entire fight will lose its last hope. I can't be just another forgotten body in this endless wilderness. The creature descended with terrifying speed, wings beating like thunder, a shadow blotting out the faint glimmers of sunlight. Instinctively, Mira raised her arm to shield her face as the beast's talons whipped past, tearing through the air where she had been moments before. The ground beneath her shook with the impact of the creature landing mere feet away, crushing leaves and branches under massive claws. Her eyes scanned frantically for anything she could use, a weapon, a distraction, anything. She spotted a broken shard of metal from the ship's hull, jagged and sharp. Gripping it tightly, her fingers slick with blood, she pushed herself up, the pain stabbing through her ribs like lightning. Every movement was agony, but surrender was not an option. Who will tell my story if I die here? She thought, her pulse pounding as the creature let out a deafening roar, filling the jungle with its terrifying power. Or will this all just be swallowed by the darkness forever? The beast lunged. Mira dodged, barely, the air rushing past her cheek as razor-sharp claws grazed her skin. The jungle around them seemed to hold its breath. Her mind screamed for survival, for an edge, for a miracle. Every instinct screamed to run, but every fiber of her being rooted her in place. She was not just fighting for herself, but for the countless lives depending on her to endure. The creature's eyes bore into hers, wild and unyielding, as if recognizing the defiance flickering within the battered human before it. Mira steadied her grip on the metal shard, breath ragged but eyes fierce. This was no longer just a crash survivor. This was a fighter, the last ember of hope, flickering amidst a world consumed by chaos. As the beast prepared to strike again, Mira whispered through clenched teeth, "I'm not done yet." Not by a long shot. The jungle erupted once more into chaos, the clash of life and death echoing through the trees, the beginning of a battle that would decide more than just her fate. Mira's eyes fluttered open to the scent of burnt wood and damp earth. She lay amidst twisted metal and shattered glass, her body aching with every breath. Crimson stained the fabric wrapped around her side, a cruel reminder of the crash that had torn her from the sky and dropped her into this alien wilderness. Her vision blurred, but beneath the haze memories surged, visions of a past she wished she could forget, yet could never escape. The faces of her parents flashed before her, lost to the chaos of interstellar war. The cruel irony gnawed at her. Their sacrifice meant nothing if she, their last hope, were to perish here. She struggled to sit up, muscles trembling with pain and exhaustion. The jungle around her was a living maze of shadows and movement, the air heavy with the scent of strange flora that she couldn't name. Every rustle, every crack of a twig sent adrenaline through her veins. Mira's fingers trembled as she wiped the sweat and dirt from her forehead, her mind racing. Why am I still here? Why did I survive when so many others didn't? Her past wasn't just haunted by loss, but by mistrust. The crew she had flown with, those she called comrades, had whispered behind her back, wary of the strange power she carried. A gift that was more curse, a terrifying ability to sense the biowaves emitted by living creatures. It made her hyper-aware of danger, but it also tore at her mind, fragmenting her peace. The very sense that kept her alive isolated her from those who should have been her family. Her thoughts spun. Why am I different? Why do those I trusted see me as something other? Am I a weapon or a monster? I can't afford to lose focus now. I won't fail again, not when so much depends on me. A sudden movement caught her eye, a flicker between the trees. She froze, her heightened senses screaming warnings. There was something stalking her, something not quite animal, yet not quite machine. Her heart pounded. The echo loud in her ears. She shifted carefully, keeping low to the ground, but the jungle was unforgiving. Vines tugged at her clothes, thorns grazed her skin, and the weight of injury slowed her every step. The sky darkened abruptly as a heavy cloud burst above, unleashing a torrent of acid rain that hissed against leaves and scorched the earth. Mira barely had time to seek shelter beneath a canopy of broad leaves, the corrosive droplets stinging her exposed skin. She gritted her teeth, willing herself to move faster, to find safety. Her biosenses pulsed with intensity, a relentless rhythm that echoed the turmoil inside her. She hated the pain this power inflicted, hated how it made her feel alien even to herself. Yet, in moments like this, it was her only shield against the unseen threats lurking in the undergrowth. Can I control this strength, or will it consume me? She wondered desperately. The jungle whispered secrets she longed to decipher but feared would unravel her sanity. Every step brought new dangers, both outside and within. Mira wrestled with shadows of doubt and fear, battling to keep her humanity intact while embracing the weapon she was becoming. Her breath quickened as the sounds of movement grew nearer. Predators, or worse! She clenched her fists, tasting blood and dirt in her mouth, her eyes burning with determination. I have to survive, not just for me, but for everything I've lost and everything I still fight for. As the acid rain softened to a drizzle, Mira prepared herself for the next trial. The jungle was alive and hungry, and so was the darkness creeping into her soul. But she was still here, still fighting, still human, if only just. Mira stumbled through the dense underbrush, her breath ragged and shallow as she tried to steady herself against the twisting vines and towering ferns that surrounded her. The crash had left her weak and wounded, but something far stranger was happening, an unfamiliar sensation crawling beneath her skin, pulsing with an eerie, almost hypnotic rhythm. She paused, trembling fingers tracing along her arm where faint green veins began to glow softly beneath the surface, weaving like living circuits through her flesh. Panic surged through her veins as the blow spread, illuminating patches of her skin with a shimmering emerald light. Her body writhed involuntarily, spasms of sharp, searing pain ripping through her muscles. She dropped to her knees, a guttural scream tearing from her throat as her limbs convulsed violently. The alien jungle seemed to close in around her, the shadows lengthening as if drawn by the chaos unfolding within her. "What's happening to me?" she gasped between ragged breaths, panic overwhelming reason. Am I dying or becoming something else? Am I still human, or am I turning into a monster? Her eyes darted wildly as she tried to focus, but the jungle offered no comfort, only the chilling sounds of movement. Just beyond her vision, from the undergrowth emerged a swarm of insectoid creatures, their chitinous bodies gleaming with unnatural hardness, mandibles snapping hungrily as they encircled her. The creatures hissed and clicked, their compound eyes reflecting the eerie glow emanating from Mira's skin. Instinctively, Mira forced herself to rise, the every movement sent jolts of agony coursing through her transformed flesh. Her fingers twitched, and to her amazement, or horror, vines burst forth from the ground, coiling around her arms as if responding to some primal call within her. The bio-armor was awakening, an uncharted force weaving itself into her very being, granting her both protection and power, yet at an unbearable cost. The insects lunged, and she barely managed to fend them off, twisting her arm to lash out with sinewy tendrils that erupted like living whips. The jungle trembled as she fought desperately, her mind a tempest of confusion and terror. She could feel the pulse of the forest inside her, strange energy surging through every nerve, but with it came the crushing weight of isolation and fear. A crackling sound pierced the chaos, a faint, static-laced voice seeping through her damaged radio. "Mira, listen carefully. Don't let this planet swallow the humanity inside you, the monsters out here. They're not your only enemy." The message was fragmented but urgent, sending a fresh wave of dread crashing over her. She understood the warning, but felt powerless, caught between an alien transformation and relentless external threats. The forest seemed alive with malice as winged creatures descended from the canopy, sharp talons glinting in the fading light. They circled with predatory precision, eyes locked on the glow that radiated from Mira's changing form. Cornered and exhausted, she steadied her breathing, her voice barely a whisper amid the cacophony. I have to survive, but at what cost? If this power means losing myself, what's left to save? The jungle closed in, the swarm growing tighter, and Mira braced herself for the next onslaught. The battle was no longer just for survival. It was a war for her very soul. A fight against becoming the thing she feared most while facing enemies both seen and unseen. Mira's breath came in ragged gasps as the winged beasts closed in, their shadowy forms blotting out the sun as they dove through the tangled canopy above. The jungle echoed with the sharp slicing of air, the scream of claws tearing through foliage, and the wet snap of powerful jaws hungry for flesh. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee into the maze of roots and vines, but she was trapped in a clearing. The battlefield set. Her body, still raw from the alien transformation, throbbed with a mixture of pain and power as the bio-armor began to respond. Tendrils of glowing green shoot from her arms, twisting and writhing like serpents as they unfurled toward the attackers. The armor was no longer just a strange burden. It had become a weapon, a living extension of her will. With a guttural cry, she lunged forward, the plant-like appendages lashing out, piercing the winged creatures mid-flight. The air was thick with the scent of burning leaves and coppery blood as the first beast screamed in agony, crashing into the undergrowth in a spray of feathers and guts. Mira's heart hammered, adrenaline sharpening her senses as she moved with a desperate grace, dodging a lethal talon that sliced through the air inches from her face. The bio-armor rippled and shifted, sprouting jagged thorns and sharp spines that scraped and stabbed at anything foolish enough to come close. But the swarm was relentless. Another beast dove from the sky, its jaws snapping as it clamped down on her shoulder with crushing force. Pain exploded through her as she screamed, the weight of its body nearly dragging her to the ground. Through blurred vision, she grasped at the living armor, willing it to protect her, and to her shock, thick vines erupted from her side, wrapping tightly around the creature's neck. With a sickening snap, it was thrown off, tumbling to the earth in a heap. Blood poured from deep wounds, mingling with the sap-like fluid oozing from her armored skin. Mira staggered but refused to collapse. Her thoughts were frantic but determined. If I don't stand now, who else will? The jungle seemed to pulse with energy, as if the very forest itself was holding its breath, watching the primal struggle unfold. Pain clawed at her limbs, but there was no room for weakness. She could feel the creeping shadow of losing herself, of the transformation consuming more than just flesh. I'm scared, she admitted to the silence between strikes, scared of what I'm becoming. But what is more important than life itself? Her voice was a whisper, lost in the cacophony of battle, but the conviction behind it resonated stronger than any roar. Suddenly, a brutal strike found its mark. A monstrous claw sliced across her abdomen, opening a jagged wound that sent a wave of agony crashing through her. She faltered, knees buckling as the world spun around her. The shadow of death stretched its hand closer, a cold finality beckoning her into oblivion. For a moment, all seemed lost. Then a surge of radiant green light burst from within the bio-armor, illuminating the dark forest with a supernatural glow. Mira's eyes snapped open, blazing with renewed strength. The living armor throbbed in harmony with her heartbeat, vines and leaves swirling wildly, growing faster and stronger in response to the awakening power. The earth trembled beneath her feet as roots burst through the soil, wrapping around the bodies of fallen beasts, pulling them down into the forgiving soil. The winged creatures recoiled, confused and terrified by the sudden eruption of power. Mira seized the moment, summoning the armor's energy into sharp spear-like thorns that shot forth like missiles, piercing her foes with brutal precision. The air was filled with the scent of scorched foliage and the metallic tang of blood as the invaders fell one by one. Around her, the jungle seemed to breathe and shift, a living organism responding to her fight for survival. Trees bent as if bowing to her will, branches snapping and twisting into shapes that blocked further attacks. The chorus of the forest bird calls, insect buzz, and the distant roar of unknown beasts rose to a crescendo, as if lending their strength to her cause. Mira's body, battered and bleeding, stood tall amidst the chaos, every fibre screaming with exertion and pain, yet refusing to yield. She had crossed a threshold, not just physically, but spiritually. The fusion of her humanity and alien bio-armor had birthed a new force, raw and unpredictable, but undeniably powerful. With one last cry, she unleashed a torrent of thorned vines, sweeping across the clearing and scattering the surviving creatures into retreat. Silence descended, broken only by Mira's heavy breaths and the soft rustling of leaves settling after the storm. She collapsed against a tree, blood dripping from her wounds, eyes closing briefly in exhaustion. But beneath the fatigue was a spark, a dangerous, volatile hope. The jungle had shown her both its cruelty and its strength, and in that brutal dance Mira had found a new part of herself, one forged in pain, fear, and fierce determination. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The forest whispered secrets still hidden, enemies still lurking, and a destiny yet to be claimed. Mira opened her eyes once more, the glow of the bio-armor pulsing faintly beneath her skin, a reminder that she was no longer just a survivor. She was a force of nature, rising from the ashes to fight another day. The night sky was alight with unnatural stars, shimmering, mechanical, and cold. Mira stood atop a jagged outcrop, her eyes fixed on the dark silhouettes hanging ominously above the jungle canopy. The alien fleet had established a massive aerial base, an impregnable fortress from which they planned to unleash devastation across the entire planet. The air crackled with tension and the distant hum of energy weapons charging. Her heart pounded in her chest as the weight of what she had discovered sank in. This was no longer a fight for survival. It was a war for the soul of the world she had come to call home. Mira's body still bore the scars of her transformation, the glowing green veins of her bio-armor pulsating beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. She had been changing, evolving, merging with the alien flora in ways that defied her understanding. Every moment, the boundary between human and something other blurred. Her mind screamed with conflict. The choice before her was unbearable: to surrender the last fragments of her humanity and become one with the bio-armor, gaining the power needed to destroy the enemy's stronghold, or cling to the fragile remnants of herself, risking annihilation and watching everything she loved be consumed. The price of victory was clear, but the cost was a question that haunted her every waking second. "I will lose myself," she whispered to the empty night, voice trembling. "But if I don't, this world dies. Am I brave enough to pay that price? To sacrifice the person I was for the person I must become?" The jungle around her seemed to respond, the leaves rustling with a ghostly energy as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Mira dropped to her knees, tears mingling with the sap-like sweat that coated her skin. The pain of her transformation was physical and spiritual, a mournful cry against the loss of self. Then a quiet voice rose within her, steady and resolute, the echo of every lesson, every hardship endured. "This is the moment you were forged for. You are not just flesh and bone anymore. You are the forest's wrath, the planet's shield. You must rise." With a cry that blended anguish and determination, Mira surrendered fully. The bio-armor flared, tendrils of glowing vines bursting from her limbs and wrapping her in a cocoon of living greenery. Her screams intertwined with the rumble of the earth as roots burst from the ground, pulling her upward into a towering figure, half woman, half forest titan. Leaves shimmered like armor plates, eyes glowing with fierce intelligence and raw power. Harnessing this newfound strength, Mira reached out with her mind, calling to the creatures of the jungle. From the shadows emerged giant beasts made of vines and bark, their monstrous forms rippling with energy as they answered her summons. Together, they prepared to challenge the invaders, to reclaim their home with nature's fury. The battlefield erupted into chaos as the alien forces launched their assault. Lasers cut through the night, illuminating the twisted forms of bioconstructs clashing against flying machines and mechanized soldiers. Thunder rolled as lightning ignited the forest, setting aflame both ally and enemy. Mira moved with terrifying grace, her form a blur of green light and deadly thorns, crushing and tearing through the invaders with relentless fury. Amidst the cacophony, Mira's mind wrestled with the cost of her choice. Is this victory worth becoming the monster feared by those I once called kin? Can salvation be found in the shadow of such sacrifice? The question lingered like smoke in the air, unanswered but profound. As the last of the enemy fell, the jungle echoed with the victorious roars of the awakened earth, but Mira stood alone, a titan silhouetted against a sky streaked with fire and ash. The planet was saved, but at what cost? The monster she had become now walked among the ruins of humanity's legacy. A protector and a warning. Her voice, when it came, was a soft lament carried on the wind. What is the meaning of victory if it leaves behind a monster standing amid humanity's ashes? The battle had ended, but the war within her was just beginning. The air was still and clear now, the distant echoes of battle fading into silence. Mira stood motionless atop the tallest tree, her towering form cloaked in the remnants of bile armor that had fused her so deeply with the jungle she barely remembered what it meant to be human. The enemy forces had been vanquished, their metallic wreckage scattered across the forest floor, but the victory felt hollow, weighed down by an unbearable solitude. Below her, the native creatures stirred, cautious and curious as life slowly began to pulse anew in the scarred landscape. Trees once charred and broken now shimmered faintly with fresh growth, leaves unfurling like delicate fingers reaching toward the light. The jungle was healing, vibrant and wild once more, a testament to resilience and rebirth. But Mira's mind was clouded, fragments of thought slipping through the fog of transformation. The person she had been, the woman who had crash-landed here, desperate and terrified, felt like a distant memory, slipping further away with each passing moment. Her eyes, glowing softly with bioluminescent hues, scanned the horizon as a quiet question echoed deep within her. Had the price been too high? Had she sacrificed too much to save this world? "I have paid too dearly," she murmured, voice barely audible, carried on the breeze. "Will anyone remember what I endured, what I gave up?" The weight of loneliness settled heavy on her shoulders, a burden far greater than any wound. Then, in a rare moment of clarity and grace, Mira extended a slender arm, her fingers weaving intricate patterns in the air. From the depths of her bio-armor, a single luminous flower blossomed, radiant and pure, glowing with a soft emerald light. It hovered before her like a message cast into the vast unknown, a symbol of hope, sacrifice, and a silent plea for understanding. The flower pulsed gently, a fragile beacon amid the shadow of devastation. Mira's thoughts drifted to those who might one day find it, to the generations that might hear her story and learn from it. Yet, beneath the hope was a lingering doubt, a question that no answer could easily resolve. Was this strength a blessing or a curse? The battle had ended, but the war within her soul raged on. Had she become the savior or the monster? Was the power she wielded the key to salvation or a prison forged by necessity? The line between heroism and horror had blurred beyond recognition as the sun's first light filtered through the canopy, painting the world in hues of gold and green. Mira remained still both guardian and ghost of a war-torn world. Her journey was far from over, but the path ahead was hers alone to walk. And somewhere deep inside a faint ember of humanity flickered, fragile yet unyielding, reminding her that even in the darkest transformations, the soul could endure. "Is this battle worth the soul it demands?" she wondered silently, a question left for time, for history, for those who might follow in her footsteps. The answer was as elusive as the dawn breaking over the jungle, both a promise and a warning. Mira's journey had become legend, whispered among the survivors and etched into the scars of a world reborn. From the moment her ship crashed into the unforgiving jungle to the final battle that saved the planet, her path was one carved from pain, sacrifice, and an unyielding will to survive. Yet the cost had been immense. She had traded the essence of her humanity for a power that teetered on the edge of monstrosity. She was no longer simply Mira. She was a living force of nature, a hybrid born from desperation and hope. Her story, a haunting reminder of the fine line between salvation and self-destruction. Her transformation was not just physical, it was a crucible that tested every fragment of her soul. In the darkest hours, when her body throbbed with alien energy and her mind grappled with fading memories of who she once was, Mira faced choices that would have shattered anyone less resolute. To wield the strength that could topple empires meant embracing shadows within herself, confronting fears of losing the very identity that made her human. Yet, despite the isolation and the profound changes, she held on to the sliver of light that defined her spirit. The lesson her story imparted was clear. True power is not found in the armor that shields the body or the weapons that throw foes, but in the choices made at the edge of oblivion. In moments when life and death hang by a thread, when sacrifice demands more than flesh and blood, it is the courage to retain one's humanity that defines a hero. Mira's strength was not just her vile armor or the monstrous forces she commanded. It was her refusal to let go of the part of herself that dreamed, that hoped, that loved. This truth echoed beyond the jungle's shadows, resonating as a call to all who face impossible odds. When confronted with survival and loss, her journey taught, Hold fast to the humanity within you. It was a message that transcended galaxies, a universal creed whispered through the cosmos. Yet the question that lingered was as piercing as it was profound. Would you dare to sacrifice yourself to save the world, knowing that in doing so you might lose the very essence of who you are? Or would you choose to live, accepting defeat but preserving your soul? Mira's fate offered no easy answer. Only a mirror, reflecting the weight of such choices back upon every heart that dared to listen. In the stillness of dawn, as the first light caressed the leaves of her bio-armor, a single droplet of dew clung delicately to a glowing petal, a fragile symbol of hope amid the ruins. It shimmered with quiet promise, reminding the world that even in the wake of devastation and transformation, life finds a way to persist, to bloom anew. Mira's story ended not with a final triumph or a definitive loss, but with an enduring question, an invitation to ponder the cost of power and the value of the self. It was a legacy that whispered through the stars, urging all who heard it to choose wisely, to fight fiercely, and above all, to never forget what makes us truly human.